Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo alongside you guys. Thank you guys for all the support. Once again, don't forget to subscribe and follow us at that Milan pod. Again, Twitter, here on YouTube, Apple and Spotify as well. Give us 5 stars on those platforms, please. Trying to get more of you guys over there as well, obviously on top of the channel here. I got locked out of the TikTok account. I finally got TikTok back on my phone. I don't know what the email or password is. So tough luck. If you're interested in some of that stuff, the shorts and reels will be up on our Instagram page, which has been doing pretty well, all things considered. So again, we appreciate all the support that you guys are giving us. Again, I know it took us a bit of time. We've been both very busy. So we try to get this in as soon as possible, halftime of the Derby d'Italia. So again, Matt, we will start with that loss against Feyenoord. So yeah, I mean, Milan, from what I saw, I had to watch the replay. Obviously, I didn't really get a chance to watch live.
Mm-hmm.
I know you got a better look at it, but this one was just very much like the weather, disgusting. A performance that was very forgettable by Milan. I don't think that there was anything encouraging outside of the fact that they're still in this tie. That's essentially it. This one was really frustrating. You see the goal conceded by Milan on Mike Maignan. It's a blunder. Howler, maybe to an extent. It depends on who you ask. Inexcusable for one of the best goalkeepers in the world, which we say that far too often on the past few seasons. So that kind of grows with the frustration of that performance by Milan, which was lethargic, not much build-up, not much creativity, not really much to boast about. So I'm going to let you take the wheels here, and you give me your assessment of that performance by Milan.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an interesting game because I think that, you had the Santiago Gimenez, return, a very quick return back to the club he played for, not too long ago. So obviously there were some emotions there. But regardless, I think the fact that Milan did put out a pretty strong 11. I mean, they had the guys that we've been talking about that we want to see collectively on the pitch at the same time. And the fact that it was still chaotic, the cohesiveness wasn't quite there. You had individual moments where, maybe João Felix or whoever looked like they can do something and make the impact, but ultimately it never came together and never came to fruition. And Milan didn't get the goal. And, the margins in the Champions League are finer than they are in Serie A because, you look at the conditions, right? Which, we discussed in the Empoli game, and Milan wound up getting the victory there. But Champions League, it's a different animal. On top of that, you had to travel to Rotterdam, and there was going to be emotions there, right? Because Feyenoord, they know their striker is coming into town. This is a big game for them. Their former striker, excuse me, and you got Milan coming into town. They know that this was the
and they had just sacked their manager,
and this was the tone-setting match, right? The torrential downpour, the big mighty Milan coming in, that home crowd really created an atmosphere for their team. And I'm not saying that it's just directly down to that, but I think this was one of those matches where you can kind of see the Feyenoord team were like galvanized behind that. Like every time a ball went out and they got a corner or they pressed and forced an issue, they were raising it to the crowd, basically pretty much saying like, come on, come on, come on. And I think that was such a huge thing for them. And they had that one player on I forgot the guy's name, Igor something, but he was like a pest the entire game. The guy who scored the goal. Paxao, yeah. He was fantastic. Of course, he has his opportunity versus Milan, and then all the fallout is, Arsenal, Tottenham, all these teams are interested in him, right? Of course. So bottom line is the performance. I don't think that necessarily Feyenoord were dominant.
Yeah.
It was abysmal in the sense from Milan that it was a big Champions League game, a team that they should handle if they're serious in this competition and making a more deeper run. And they came out, again, it's like an question of energy and character with this team.
And the players were saying that after the game, which
was it was
very
the same
confusing
vibe and feeling that everyone was kind of transmitting. They say, well, we didn't have this, we lacked this. And those are things that are controllable.
Yeah.
So it's like funny where players are very open and vulnerable and honest about like how the game went. And they're like, yeah, we just didn't have the energy and the character. It's like, you can control that. It's not like a team tactically outclassed you, did more than this, created their chances, did this, and just beat you, but you guys brought the energy. Like your character and energy levels and work rate and effort have constantly come into question this year under multiple coaches, which says a lot about this group. And despite all the players that have been sort of leaving and coming in this
Yeah.
past window, that is still an issue. And it's concerning yet again that you're seeing that become a big problem and a reason for why they're not able to get results in crucial matches like this in the Champions League, when truthfully, your energy and effort and character, that
Is a
should be like
minimum.
the minimum in
Yeah.
in a match like this.
I got more frustrated by the comments and an admission
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
For me, I'd rather you just not say anything.
Yeah.
I'd rather you just take it on the chin. All right, second leg. And I think that's kind of how some of them responded. They knew that energy wasn't there. I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. I think when you play a lot of, and I'm not making excuses here. I'm just like trying to like say why some of this stuff arises. Again, when you have so many fixtures so often, these players are going to be playing quite a lot. I think you could see it in like players like Pulisic and Leao, who are pretty dead tired, and even then they're putting in garbage performances. Magnan, there's no excuse for that. There's that clip that was going around of Pavlovic sprinting back on that counterattack when it really seemed like he was the only one putting in that sort of effort. I do feel for these midfielders. I truly do. I like for me with Leao and Pulisic and some of these other players there's adequate replacements and backups that should be able to do the job and have stepped in to fill the void. Like Fofana Reinders don't have any help. I think this is where you missed Musa to an extent. Again, that's his fault with this. I think his energy provided off of the bench would have been huge. But we see it now where Milan's position in Serie A is impacting where they are in Europe and other competitions because they have to do everything that they can to collect the 3 points in the league because they started off so terribly. We're still talking about them being 4 points or so off the top four, even though they have a game in hand. That sort of stuff it's just frustrating because then you see this type of performance where, say, a new manager boos this or that, but their fullbacks are kids shutting down Rafael Leao. And you're thinking to yourself, Leao, again, just with these sort of moments and absolutely not making any excuses for him. The output has been there on occasion, more so recently, but the full 90-minute performances from him are non-existent. They're just not there. Sure, like we'll talk about the Verona match in a second. He makes the impact. He gets the assist, sure. But if we're talking about the entire performance outside of that, it's underwhelming. Just like quite a few of these players here, Milan did not have the ball enough. They didn't do a good enough job in terms of creating chances to finish those chances. And when they did, they were just ever so frustrating in how they were executing them, especially Leao within the box. The good news is there's 2 legs and they've only conceded 1 goal and they have to go back to Milan. And I think with that crowd there, how they were able to sort of balance, and we'll get into the Verona match and then leg 2 for the preview. I think they're still very much in this. I think there's still some positivity there. And let's face it, you could get a Milan that's very poor one day, and then the next day they're great. So we'll see what Milan shows up in that one, but they're heading down 1-0 into the second leg. So let's turn our sights over to Serie A. So with this one, this victory over Verona, the worst defensive side in Serie A, we come out starting the backups within this one. For me, I understood where Conceição was coming from. There's always 2 sides to the coin here. And Pioli kind of had difficulty with this as well, where it's sort of like, am I going to be starting my main guys at the beginning of the match so we could kill this off early and then sub them off later on when we have everything under control? Or do we try and get on by with our backups so we get more rest for our starters? There's always 2 ways to go about it. I respect both ways because you and I always say this. It's about the minutes you play, not when you start or when you come off the bench. It's the said player had 60, 70 minutes. Okay, that's great. We didn't have to play him for 90. For Milan in this one, the chances were not coming around that often, which was very frustrating. I thought a few players had good performances. I know others were very harsh and critical of them. For me, I thought João played well. All things considered, I thought he did in the final third again. I don't think anyone played well. I will preface by that. There was the one moment that got us to the goal. That was great. I will say just overall performances, though, kind of frustrating. João did a good job of drawing fouls and all that sort of stuff. I like Musa and I appreciate Musa's work rate. But again, in the final third, just skying that shot is just
terrible.
You're kind of just, I don't know about you, Matt, or any of you guys that are watching and listening. the frustration and when that shot went over, it's just sort of like, when is he going to get one, man? Like, when are you going to finally
Yeah.
put one in the back of the net that is a good attempt? I know he had one attempt that just went on the outside of the crossbar or the upper 90. It's just Musa does a lot of good things, and then you see him in the final third, and it's more of the same. And I think that's kind of where it becomes into a full-blown frustration with him. But everything within the first half, and then we'll get into the second. First half, Milan, the very frustrating Milan that we've kind of sadly grown accustomed to this year.
Mhm.
What were your sort of thoughts on that? And then we'll hop into the second half where things were looking up.
Yeah, I am inclined to agree on your assessment of how things played out in the first half. I think there were a couple moments where Musa made some really good late runs into the box, and Milan's lack of composure in that department has been an Achilles heel for a while, right? I mean, this dates back to even last year, a year before that. Although, again, in the Scudetto winning year, when you had Zlatan and Giroud, and you kind of masked around some of those issues because Milan were winning games a little bit more frequently. You had a name like Giroud or Ibrahimovic, and they were scoring goals. So if they blew one or two, but they scored one, and you won the game, it really wasn't too much of a problem. Thankfully, in a match like this, Milan wound up getting the goal, which again we'll talk about the great combination play in the final
Yeah.
third for Milan to get the breakthrough. But yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at Musa too, I just kind of want to kind of touch on him a little bit because I know we have a big, American follower base, and
Yeah.
obviously who are trying to understand what's going on with Musa from a domestic competition sense, but also how that can translate to the national team. You almost kind of look at how Weston McKennie's become this sort of like midfield dynamo for Juventus, and
It's just all
I
over the
just
place. He played
he's
left back
all over the
against us,
place.
I believe, right?
He'll do the dirty work. He'll do a lot of the things that we all tend to appreciate and call out with Musa when we do see them. But when he gets into the final third, Weston McKennie, I don't know what it is. He just seems like he kind of has like that little bit more like refined game where he knows how to pull off the simple goal. I mean, he's had some great goals. Like he's had some
A ton of headers as well. His goal in the
but like
Champions League was
his
magnificent.
kind of understanding about how to finish what the right of finishing approach is something I would love to see Musa grow into, right? And
Yeah,
they can
absolutely.
then the reason why I compare them too is because they're both American internationals, US internationals. They've been in this league for a couple of years now, more Weston more so.
Weston, yeah.
And you're seeing kind of like the frustration that grows with being a Milan supporter watching Musa because you'll see like a good pass, you'll see the good work rate, you'll see the defensive, ability and the coverage and all these sorts of things. And it's like great run in the box. And all of a sudden it's like skies it. And then he had another one too. Santiago Gimenez fed him. That was the one that he kind of like slipped, kind of didn't get body over ball. And then
Yeah.
there was even another one too where Leao squared a ball towards the top of the box and he just missed it. And it's like those are the types of things that make you kind of like, I don't know if this guy's going to figure it out soon enough. Like you give him 3
Yeah,
years,
so
how many
that
years are you
was
going to
gonna
give the guy
be
for him to figure out these sorts of things? So it's like, I don't know, but I think the first half, generally speaking, I mean, I think the frustration was obviously there for Santiago because he really didn't get a lot of service. There was a
no.
lot of like needless possession, a possession that didn't really result in anything, and it didn't really result in an opportunity for Santiago. He had one that was actually a really nice finish, like a kind of like a
Yes,
delicate
yes,
touch,
yeah.
but it was
Offside.
ruled offside. So like he seems like when he does get those opportunities, he's going to score goals. He scored in this game, and he scored against Empoli.
She got 3
But
goal contributions
yeah,
already.
he's got three. He's playing well, even with the thing I'm loving about him too, and then we'll get to the second half, is kind of the way he has that sort of mentality where he doesn't really, especially for a striker, when you're not getting the ball and you're not kind of in the rhythm of the game and you're not getting touches and you're not getting, it's
Sure.
easy for you to kind of like, and
Check
then when
out.
that one chance comes, that half chance comes, you screw it up. He
Yeah.
seems like the guy that has the sort of mental capacity and like the locked in approach where if he gets 15 touches in a game and he gets that one chance, he's going to make it count. And that's the one thing I've really quickly appreciated about the goals that he scored is that there's a kind of like that calmness that he has when he's in that area. He's very comfortable in the final third and he kind of picks his spots and he goes for the right finish when he needs to.
Yeah, just real quick to go back on the Musa side of things, because I agree with your Santiago stuff. We'll get into his game winner in just a bit. For Musa, it's just very fascinating to see everything over on the timeline. He's a very uh, divisive sort of player within the fan base in terms of how they like him. So he's still a very young player, but also at the same time, he has a lot of experience under his belt. Obviously in La Liga with the national team, and then obviously at Milan, his role has grown significantly over the course of this year as opposed to last. Where do you think the patience sort of lies with management? I think management and the coaches like him more than most of the fan base, or a good amount of the fan base. I think there is sort of this split right now where we see our good friend Maxi Lombardia, who does not want any part of Musa. And I see quite a lot of people
Yeah.
not really want him. And for me, it's kind of what I was just saying before. Sure, there's plenty of good things. I appreciate the good things. He's not stout defensively where you're like, okay, I can live with it. He does in a way
He doesn't
remind
do
you.
anything like to a high level. And I know he's young,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he's kind of like in that position where
How
he's
much
like
better can he get?
he does a lot of things like pretty well to average, but
Yeah.
like there's like a cap on everywhere. There's no like, hey, he can be a
He's
pretty
elite
good
in this
defender, but like
category.
he's a really good finisher in the box, or
Yeah.
he's a pretty below average finisher, but man, like he's a lockdown defender.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. There's
that's
none
kind
of
of where
that.
I'm at
Yeah.
with him.
He's just a very good athlete, which is obvious, and that's a great thing to have. There's no
Yeah.
knock on that. There's just it's Italy's very difficult. It's hard to adjust. He's
Yeah.
also been playing out of position at times. They have him as a right winger, right attacking midfielder. It's tough for him. I think there's been good performances because we've seen what he's done against Real Madrid, and you're like, okay, that's something we could go off of that. But I think when he finds himself more and more in the final third, you have to execute better. And to an extent, it reminds me of Frank Kessie because Frank Kessie, people forget when he first showed up, and well, some do remember very well.
Mhm.
He was horrendous in the final third, like actually terrible. He had some good finishes from time to time. I know he had like one solo run goal against Sassuolo. Open play goals, Kessie was missing a ton.
Yeah.
There was a ton of chances over the course of his career at Milan where he was not doing great, but Kessie did really fine in other areas. That you were sort of happy with how he was playing. For me, with Musa, I'm okay with keeping him one more year. I don't necessarily think you have to get rid of him immediately because you don't have to. He doesn't cost a lot of money. He's been a good enough squad player. He's still healthy. He's just not elite. Milan needs to get higher end players. Absolutely.
I
And
think
and that's kind of where I'm at
I
with
think
him.
the one thing, last thing, my final
Go
point
for it.
on that is, I think in look, if you looked at year 1, 2, this is his second year,
Second.
right? Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
So if you look at his second year growth and you look at it, you're like, okay, he's played a substantial amount more minutes. Like he played a pretty good amount under Fonseca, and
Yeah.
Conceição has played him quite a bit too,
Yes.
obviously for multiple reasons, being the competitions, yes, but also sort of,
I mean,
changing
lack of midfielders, I would
lack of
say. I mean, the
midfielders too,
Benacer
right?
gets sold. Bondo's not ready to go.
And you can't use a guy like Bondo in the Champions League. So it's like, and
Yeah.
Loftus-Cheek has been injured, and
Yeah.
Benacer's gone, and so like by all accounts, Musa's your third midfielder. And when you look at that, you're kind of thinking to yourself, like, put this into perspective. And I hate to keep harping on it, but Milan a couple seasons ago, when they won Scudetto, they had pretty much 3 starting quality, like premium
Yeah.
midfielders based on
Yeah.
the performance at that
Of
time.
course. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So when you're looking at a guy like Musa, and you're like, okay, people can say, make the argument, oh, he didn't really play too much. Like they kind of sometimes do that with
But he's
Chukwueze.
even better than
And then
Krunic.
year 2, he gets that opportunity. He's getting those minutes. He's playing in a double pivot. He's playing as a wing back. He's playing as a winger. He's
Yeah.
getting minutes to play and to really kind of sort of cement where his true position is within this team. And he kind of like is still falling short, where like he'll do a thing and he'll kind of rope you in, and you're like, oh, Musa was pretty good today. And then the next game, when he gets that opportunity to play, you're like, all right, like what's the next step? Is he going to like
Yeah.
take it and run and grow, or is it going to be one of those like regression type of performances?
Yeah.
Because the game against Real Madrid, it teased us. He was everywhere. He was phenomenal in that game. But that's
Yeah.
like a one-off game where you're like, okay, that's
And then
great. I need
yeah.
to see more of that.
And then there's other like decent performances mixed in there. And again, that kind of brings up the question of he's 22, but also his experience. It's interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic. No other sport has something like this. I'm willing to be a little bit more patient with him because I think there is some more upside to reach.
I'm also
Speaking,
hoping too that
yeah, go for it.
Bondo is someone that can kind of
Yeah,
maybe jockey into that
yeah,
conversation, and having some competition within the team can maybe push
That's the
Pulisic to
big
be.
thing. There's no Loftus-Cheek as well to kind of it's again, this is all goes back to the profiles of players that this management bought and how they don't necessarily fit in with the system that they're sort of forcing. It's just
Yeah.
a bigger conversation. Okay, so to the second half, Milan finally end up getting a win here. Santiago, Gimenez, Leao, obviously Alex Gimenez helps set this up. Lofted ball off to Leao, volleyed assist to Gimenez, who does a great job of being disciplined, staying behind the ball, heading it in. Milan get that 1-0 victory. For me, like you and I have said for quite some time, especially yourself, ugly performance, kind of don't care right now. Just get the 3 points.
Yeah.
Milan did that. I thought they looked better and they had more of the ball within the final third. They were trying to create some things. But again, when you're against a low blocker like that, regardless of how Verona is, for me, you just executed. That's it. I don't think anyone was particularly great within the second half. I'm just happy that they had a great moment. And sometimes that's enough. That's all you need.
For sure. I mean, I think, I've been saying it many times. I can't say it more, but I'm going to do it anyway. Is at this point of the season, at this stage, like I don't care how we do it, just get 3 points. And it's interesting with this match too, right? Because worst defense in Serie A by again a pretty wide margin. I think coming into this game, it was something like 10 or 11 goals that Verona worked, like comfortably worst in Serie A. And you're also at home, and you also have these fresh new toys in this attack. Granted, he didn't start all of them. I think Pulisic and Rafa both came off the bench. But still, the fact that you're not able to kind of like break down a team and unlock a team from like
Worst
the
defensive
get-go,
team in Serie A.
yeah, it's kind of disappointing. But I think again, it also does come maybe with the territory of the fact that, hey, you have a team that they're trying to get just a draw. And they're not afraid to just put numbers behind the ball because they don't want to get into a chasing match. That's where Milan are at their best, right? We've seen in the Roma game, we've seen it time and time again. However, the fact that it always needs to be the conversation of, oh, it's still tied, but you have to have this game because it is Verona. Bring on Pulisic, bring on Leao, bring on the players, play them all 90 minutes, and now you kind of hope and pray that it doesn't have a carryover effect and it doesn't come at the cost of maybe bowing out of the Champions League because these guys are tired. Granted, they're professionals. They're not the names I just mentioned are younger players. They're not banged up right now. They all seem, I know Leao had the ankle and Pulisic came back recently, but these guys should be ready to go. And I think the bigger, broader conversation is I don't want to see this sort of lack of character. I don't want to see this lack of effort. Those are the types of things that simply don't fly with me is the effort. And I think for all the flaws that guys like Alexis Salamakers had and whatever, that's why some fans, and that's why some coaches kind of still go to that because they're like, this guy's going to give me everything. And the fact that you still have to kind of ask the question of a guy like Rafa, who the commentators made a great point in that Feyenoord game. You know, at the very beginning, he was getting flustered. He didn't really look like he was in control of himself. And on many occasions when he was going forward, where like when he's on and he's in, like he's unplayable. Like there's no one stopping him in open space. He'll dribble by 2-3 guys and he'll make magic happen. But when he's not up for it, it's like one of those things where it's like, you're 25, 26. Why are you not up for this game? Why are you not up for it? Why are you not like it's a Champions League game? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where the frustration stems. But I think, again, Gimenez, fantastic goal to stay behind. How many times have we seen players go offsides on that? Morata, Giroud, like guys that just don't really like understand where they are at.
Someone told me about Morata.
I saw that.
I was like, yo, bro, he wouldn't even be in position to try and score a goal because like this guy doesn't have instincts like that.
I thought Gimenez too. I know you said the link up too, but like Gimenez with a J.
Alex,
yeah, good performance by him too. I mean, again, I think that a very young player. I think he's played.
You're that Torgrud?
Yeah, he's played quite a bit of minutes this year. He's been asked to be a winger. He's been asked to switch flanks on multiple occasions. And I think it's what we're seeing from Alex Gimenez now is finally aligning with the expectation and the words that Zlatan had in preseason, where he was saying, this guy is going to be the deputy to Theo Hernandez. Like he's going to be the backup guy. He's going to be that sort of individual. The fact that it's taken this long or took as long as it did, you know, at the time when Fonseca pretty much was on his last legs as the coach, was a little bit more frustrating because I think we looked at the personnel in this area and we were like scratching our head because you told us that he was going to play more. You had two guys that were below average and we're not giving us anything. And now we're seeing it and it's like, yeah, no shit, he's playing well. Like, no shit, he's a good player and he's making an impact and he has that penchant to go forward and he has the energy. He has young Teo in him. Like, when Teo came to this team, was hungry and was just not maybe as controlled in his game. He still needs to grow in that department. But the way he plays, where he's like, I'm going to press, I'm going to try to force the ball, I'm going to try to swing in dangerous crosses. Energy. There's just energy to his game. And sometimes that is what can galvanize a team. And you just saw his creativity on that play as well, ahead of the goal. So really good performance by him. I think that was a big standout match for him. And I can see why Conceição does like him a lot. I truly do see that. And I think it's going to be one of those things next summer that's going to be very interesting because I know the status on Teo is forever changing. If you believe media, what happens with Gimenez? Do they think they can elevate him to a little bit more prominent role? Who knows?
Moreto was saying that they want to reopen negotiations with Real Madrid to get rid of those buybacks, which, again, if you're going to do something like that, Real Madrid is going to come back with, okay, then pay us more. You want those gone? You don't want those options on the table?
They don't want to get burned like the Teo.
And this is why it's shit negotiations by bad management, because if you had the foresight of seeing it where you knew that you wanted to make it more so a permanent move, why are you giving Real Madrid these options at a really cheap price to redeem him, only for this to come back and like this option in negotiations where they're going to ask for 20 million? They're going to do that. They're not gonna give you this sort of like, okay, yeah, we'll get rid of our 10 million. This is Real Madrid. You're not gonna bully them. You don't have Paolo Maldini in these negotiations who's able to sweet talk them into getting them. They're still pissed that they gave one of the best left backs in the world away for 20 million. Like, it's just whatever. Just gonna move on, right? Okay. By the way, U of A Inter tied here in the 63rd minute. Milan had a very good weekend within Serie A. We should note that. Fiorentina lost this morning to Como 2-0. Milan gaining the 3 points on them. Bologna had that stoppage time winner that saw them get those points, but Atalanta dropped points. Lazio, Napoli, if you want to count Napoli, had also dropped points. So Milan did a very good job of at least capitalizing on those in the weeks in which those teams were playing against relatively good opponents. So now on to Leg 2 as we finish up this podcast here. Listen, no excuses. You're at San Siro, Champions League night. You're down 1-0. Balls to the wall. Advance. I don't care how you do it.
Yeah.
Do it. For me, I think getting Musa back is a pretty important thing in terms of just bodies and energy. Because, again, with that lack of energy against Feyenoord in leg 1, zero chance you can come out like that again. You come out like that again, it's going to be a problem. I think just based off of that and that sort of energy, the magnitude of the situation, they have no choice but to come out with good energy. And that's kind of where I'm going to see this going. Weather conditions, presumably better in this. Again, that's for both sides. Both sides play in those conditions. Again, we've got to remember, outside of a stupid goal scored by Feyenoord, they didn't do much outside of that. So for Milan to be in this position here, a little bit more advantageous. They don't have their home fans behind them. They're going to be playing in one of the most difficult stadiums in the world. Matt, how do you see this going?
I see it 2-1 Milan, which I think would bring the game into extra time because if we're going strictly on the 1-0 deficit coming into the game. Yeah. That's how it's weighed, right? There's no goal, you weigh goals. There's nothing like that. I'm assuming that's how it would work in this scenario.
Yeah.
One of the concerns that I have is the goal conceded by Mike Maignan and some of his recent play. He's been suspect. Like, I've had kind of panic attacks watching every kind of ball go at him because he's been trying to catch some of these balls that are come at him and it goes through his hands and above the bar. And I'm kind of like on edge a little bit lately with him because he hasn't looked that sure of himself.
I agree.
So what does that do for Feyenoord? Does that stoke something within them to say, guys, we can have this keeper. We can beat him near post, which has always been a problem more so recently. And is that the kind of mentality that Feyenoord goes out with? Because they just beat him. They conceded a goal. They know this Milan team is Jekyll and Hyde the whole entire season,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to get a pretty good performance by Feyenoord. I think if they come out flat, I would be pretty stunned. I think ultimately, if we see another lackluster effort and energy and no character from this Milan team, man, they're going to get whistled out of that stadium.
Oh, absolutely.
Big time,
Absolutely.
big time, because it's inexcusable for them to if they do what they did in leg one, and they mimic that to an extent in the second leg, and they bow out. Man, there's going to be broader conversations about one, how are these players reacting to Sergio? Because it's been over a month now. It's been a month and a half, right? He's still got to kind of feel out certain players. Like we've had, a 10, 12 games, give or take. Like it's been enough of a sample size to know which players are taking to his way of coaching and his philosophy, and some players that are a little bit turned off, a little bit more, I'm not really feeling it. So that'll be interesting, is if this team comes out with a very, we're going through the motions, we're not polished in front of goal, we're doing all the same things that have been persisting with this team. That's kind of how I feel going into it. I'm hoping and leaning that it's going to be a 2-1 game, but man, it's going to be tight. It's not going to be easy, in my opinion.
So the comments on Conceição, for me, and this isn't like I'm giving an apology to Pioli, because I'm not going to, because I thought his job was still, he did a poor job. At the end of his career at Milan. Love him for everything he did. No, not denying that. We'll never deny that. 3 managers now. 3. So when you bring up attitude and energy, I know where I'm pointing at. And a lot of people don't want to do it because they love these guys because they want to try. I don't give a shit. It's the players. These guys have no excuses. There's 0 excuses. I don't like this manager. I don't like that manager. Oh, Pioli was to this. Fonseca to that. Conceição this. It's you. There's a common denominator here. There's management that's come and gone. There's ownerships that's come and gone. There's managers now that have come and gone. You are the problem. And for me, if they don't step up here and at least knock out Feyenoord, and whatever happens with the draw in the next round is whatever, I know who I'm pointing to. I know that, like, at the end of the day, Conceição is not the reason they lost to Feyenoord. And I know there's a lot of popular and big Milan accounts out there that like to point the finger at the manager for that particular game. He didn't make him suck. He didn't make the goalkeeper make that mistake, who wants top dollar, by the way. And I'm okay with paying some of these players top dollar. At least play like it on a consistent basis, because quite a few guys, Leao included, don't do it. How many of these guys sitting here wanting this pay raise are not elevating their game or even staying at that top level that we know that they could play at? Leao, the inconsistencies are still always there. Teo, please. 2025 has been better, but largely the past 2 seasons, he's been subpar. Maignan same goes for him. It's not a lack of effort on Magnan's part. It's just too many blunders. I'm really sick and tired of hearing the narrative and conversation around this team every single time that they don't do anything is because of energy. It's because of this. There's too many excuses. You're at one of the biggest clubs in the world. What you were saying before, the standard, the minimum is your effort. If you were too tired, if you're ailing injury-wise, let people know. Get proper subs. Get the backups.
Yep.
And that's like a domino effect of like a management as well, not doing an adequate job of that. The excuses made for these players because they gave the fans a great memory. And by the way, guys, you remember the graphic when all those players are gone? They're all gone. There's like 3 or 4 guys from that title-winning team. So who are you hanging your hat on anymore? These guys in here, for me, I have a short leash with quite a few of them, and even the best of players. Because you want to know why? Because I care about the team more than anything else. I don't give a shit about these agendas. You, over your left shoulder right now, have Kaká's jersey hanging up. A player who is infinitely better than anyone on this team. Infinitely leaps and bounds better. I never had a question ever in my life. They sold him when he didn't want to go. I don't care who leaves this team. I care who wins for this team. I care who puts in the highest level of effort on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really sick and tired of it when I have to hear these things about, well, this and that, the management. The players are in there. You think so highly of them, then they should be performing on a consistently high level. If that's the case, if they're so good, if they're so great, then they should be able to do that. Fact is, people don't want to admit some of these players are not as good as they like to think. Some of them super talented. Teo's great talent. Leao, great talent. Maignan, great talent. Okay, Pulisic, I have nothing negative to say about. Sometimes he does have poor games. Doesn't get like the crap. Fofana inconsistent. Reinders, whatever. No one is without criticism within this team as far as I'm concerned. So ultimately, there's no excuses. I'm really sick of it. Milan better advance to the next round. Otherwise, I'm going to say it straight up. Everyone is up for sale. Any price, not any price. I'm saying there is a price to be met for every single one of them. And I'm dead serious about that. Because guess what? How many years in a row now? Not even close to the title. Not close. Okay? Winning other competitions. What is there? A Super Copa? They've won 2 trophies within 10 years. Okay? Where's the standard at? So that's kind of my little rant about that. I'm getting tired of it.
No, I mean, I really don't have much more to add to that. I think
I'm just rambling.
this season's no. This because I'm looking at just kind of clock too and thinking like you said everything that needed to be said, and I think it's again we've been tirelessly beating this sort of concern and tirelessly beating this same thing about this club for the better part of a year now, year and a half. It's beyond tired. You pull on this shirt, you have a responsibility. You do. You're playing for AC Milan, and I'm going to even say, going to go beyond that. You're a professional football player. You can't give effort. You're getting paid that money. I see more effort on a 7v7 in my local league.
Yeah.
And guys aren't getting paid anything.
Yeah.
So how are you so entitled that we just didn't have the energy? We didn't have like
how does that? What does that even mean? You don't have the energy?
That's a you
Why would
problem.
you ever admit that?
Do you need hand holding constantly? Hey Rafa, hey Teo, come on! I need your effort today. I need you to try hard. That's youth, like U5, U6, when you have kids running around. Like, come on, run this way. You have to coddle and baby players. And you have one here. More importantly, you have one here. You've won a trophy here. You've tasted what it feels like to be a successful, winning, top shelf AC Milan player. At the very heart of the project, you need motivation. I know contracts are a thing. Understandable. Show us you deserve the contract. Show us you want the money. Here, Mike. Here, Teo. All these guys that want this extra cash, they want everything that comes around with it. Show us. Show the fans, because I think you're spot on. You're spot on. These fans, they want to see a winning product.
And I do like
for me, player X. Give me somebody else who's going to try, who's going to empty the tank and give me everything he has on a given match day for 90 minutes. That's all. That's all. Yeah. I can tolerate he had a bad misplaced pass, or this guy had he has to do better and get the least a shot on goal. But if he's running and he's trying, that is something that you shouldn't have to constantly monitor with a team and a group and a badge and a club like this. Period.
Absolutely. Juve just went up ahead. Conceição scores 1-0 on Inter at the moment. Kolomuani did an amazing job there. Got to give Juve credit. Not a good team though, but at the end of the day, I think you're right. And just to not preface because we've already spoken about it, but Matt and I do not dislike Teo, Leao, or whatever. We just have high standards. We just have high standards. And if you're not meeting those standards, and if it's for reasons that are effort-based, it's a slap in everyone's face. Straight up, slap in everyone's face. Like the final note I'll make is like everyone likes to use this like, oh, Teo's not happy that Paulo Maldini is not here to create this environment. Get over it. Get over it, dude. Don't care. Just don't care. Straight up, I don't. Why should I care about your sentiments and feelings about one management guy not being here anymore? You don't need Paolo Maldini to hold your hand. Maldini didn't need Saki Capello when they left to hold his hand and be great. They didn't need that. They did not need that. Plenty of other players in the past. It's just, for me, it's a tired subject. If you and we could, the both of us, and I'm sure many of the other listeners and watchers here would agree, if you left it all out on the pitch and it just wasn't good enough, everyone else can digest that much easier than the effort side of things and what we saw in leg one. So we'll see what happens in this one. Again, guys, greatly appreciate all of you. Subscribe and follow us at That Milan Pod. Shout out to every single podcast that likes and supports us. Me, Marco, Football Kush, MLM Podcast, Old Heart Rossonero. Again, the Sempre Milan podcast, as always. Probably drawing a blank on a podcast or two here. But again, we greatly appreciate it. Follow us. Give us 5 stars. You got everything from Matt at Matt_Santangelo at AC Milan Bros. Again, everywhere at That Milan Pod, and myself at Martino Puccio, Martino_Puccio on Instagram. Greatly appreciate all of you guys, and it's always a ton of fun to do this. Stay tuned for the next episode. Have no real idea on when that'll be just yet because of work schedules, but we greatly appreciate you, and see you next time.